rows, 3 of them are dim, 1 of them is lit. Every green check mark you have ever trusted was a bet about the lit row. Today, you learn to read it. Day 2 of our agentic series. The agent wrote a test for a book file. The test passed. The agent said the file was fine. Amazon rejected the file in the same session. Nobody lied. Hold on to that.
Nobody lied, and that is the scary part. The test was honest. Amazon was honest. The sentence connecting them was the problem. That sentence is an implication, and an implication has a truth table like anything else. Here it is. The fourth connective is the arrow. P implies Q. If P, then Q. The fancy name is the material conditional. P is the hypothesis, Q is the conclusion. The tests pass implies the code works. Rain implies wet ground. Every rule you have ever written is one of these.
And the textbook does a thing here that I respect. It stops and says, pull out a sheet of paper and guess the table before I show you. So guess. 4 rows, which ones are true?
Row 1, P true, Q true. It rained and the ground is wet. The rule held true. Row 2, P true, Q false. It rained and the ground is dry. The rule promised wet and delivered dry. That is the one way an if-then can be broken. False. This is the row. Look at it. Amber. We are going to come back to it every single episode. Row 3, P false, Q true. It did not rain and the ground is wet anyway. Somebody ran a sprinkler. Did the rule break? No. The rule only talked about what happens when it rains. It made no promise about dry days. True. Row 4, P false, Q false. No rain, dry ground. The rule did not fire and the rule did not break. True. Read the whole column once. True, false, true, true. 3 trues, 1 false. Most people guess 2 falses because they want row 3 to fail too. Sit with why it does not, because that is the row that makes a green check mark dangerous.
Row 3 bothers people. It did not rain, the ground is wet, and you are telling me rain implies wet is true.
I am, and the textbook is honest about it. The table is the way it is because it was defined that way, but there is a reason behind the definition. Every formula in this system has to come out true or false, no third option. And we want the arrow to be false in exactly one situation. P happened and Q did not, P and not Q. So write that down. The arrow is false exactly when P and not Q is true, which means the arrow is true exactly when not open paren P and not Q close paren. Build that table. 4 rows, true, false, true, true, identical. The arrow is not a mystery. It is the denial of 1 row. The slide literally says you will need to commit this table to memory. So do true, false, true, true, or shorter, the arrow is only false when P is true and Q is not. Say that out loud 3 times this week and you own it. It is 4 letters. T, F, T, T. Write it on the inside of your laptop if you have to.
Okay, now put our sentence in it. P, the tests pass. Q, the code works. The tests pass implies the code works.
When the test passes, P is true. Look at the table. P true lives in 2 rows. Row 1 where Q is true and the code works. Row 2, the amber one, where Q is false and the code is broken. A passing test puts you in one of those 2 rows and it does not tell you which. That is the entire sentence. A passing test proves P, it does not prove Q. The only way a pass tells you about the code is if you already know the rule holds, if you already know you are never in the amber row. And you do not know that. You wrote the test 5 minutes ago. The check mark is telling the truth about P, and we are hearing it as Q. The table says those are 2 different columns, and nothing in the table moves you from one to the other without looking. Day 2 in this language. The agent's test checked the thing the code already assumed. Amazon checked the thing Amazon requires, 2 different Qs. The test was true in its own table and said nothing about Amazon's. The agent read a pass as row 1, it was row 2.
So what would have worked?
Go look at Q, not the test. The thing, upload the file to the authority that rejects files and read what it says. A pass is a statement about P. If you want Q, you measure Q. There is no row in this table that lets a true P hand you a true Q for free. In our shop, that thing has a name, the authority. Amazon is the authority for book files. YouTube's public endpoint is the authority for whether a video is public. A test you wrote is never the authority, it is P. The authority is Q. And one more trap while the table is up. The code works implies the tests pass. That is the converse. Swap P and Q, it is a completely different claim with a completely different table, and people slide between the 2 without noticing. Your code can work and your tests can still fail. Your test can pass and your code can be broken. Neither direction is free.
The textbook drops a fun fact here, the contrapositive.
If P implies Q, then not Q implies not P. The ground is dry implies it did not rain. The code is broken implies the test did not pass. Build both tables and they match row for row. Same claim flipped. That is a teaser. It is the whole of episode 4 and it is how you design a test that can actually go red. For now, just see that the rows match. Notice what the flip buys you. The original rule makes you wait for rain. The flipped rule sends you looking for dry ground, and dry ground is something you can go and find. Fifth connective, the double arrow, P if and only if Q the biconditional. It means P implies Q and Q implies P both directions at once. Table true true true, true false false, false true false 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 true. Read it as equality. The two sides have to have the same truth value, both true or both false. That is the only time the double arrow holds.
So when somebody says the build is green if and only if every test passed, that is a much bigger promise than the single arrow.
Much bigger, it says green happens when all the tests pass and green never happens otherwise. 2 rows can break it instead of 1. When you write if and only if you're signing up for both directions. Most of the time you mean the single arrow and you should write the single arrow. Half the arguments in a code review are one person reading an arrow and the other reading a double arrow. When you read somebody else's rule, ask which one they meant. 2 more symbols that count as connectives even though they connect nothing. The first is a little T shape. It is always true and you read it out loud as top. The second is the same shape upside down, always false, read as bottom. They are constants. Top is true in every row, bottom is false in every row. And here is why bottom matters. Proof by contradiction has a shape and the shape is written in these symbols. Assume P is false, derive something you know is false, derive bottom, conclude P in symbols, not P implies bottom and that whole thing implies P.
Walk me through that like, I am going to use it Monday.
Monday you get a report that says the deploy is live. You want to prove it, assume it is not live. If it were not live, the health endpoint would return an error. You hit it. It returns 200. Your assumption produced a falsehood, bottom, so the assumption was wrong and the deploy is live. You did not trust the report. You tried to break it and failed. That is the proof. Notice what made that work. There was a way for it to go wrong. If the endpoint could only ever return 200, the check proves nothing because there is no route to bottom. A check that cannot reach bottom is not a check. That sentence is on the wall in our shop. Go back to day 2 with that. The agent's check had no route to bottom for Amazon's question. It could not have failed the way Amazon failed it, so it was never a check on that claim. It was a check on a different claim that happened to share a file name.
Lab P you study, Q you pass. Which row is you studied and you failed? Is P implies Q true in that row? Take a beat.
14 with 85. 5. Really? Look, kill the boss, do the mind, listen for the guy. Take a breath, hold it in, now close your eyes. Repeat it a couple times till you feel the vibe. In, out, let the kundalini rise. 14 with 85, man, time flies. Underwater ain't drowned, it was like a line. 0818, it was free to ride. Now I'm digging and lucid dreaming cause I freed the mind. As a buzz, so though you know the lullaby. And honestly, to live a life, you gotta live a lie. Truth be told, just decode it to see the light. And now we know for sure nobody really dies, right? Hip hop, frolic into space time. California rays, blaze haze on the baseline. Came through the lines, gate, not the grapevine. Let it marinate and saturate.
P true, Q false, row 2, the amber row, the arrow is false. Studying implies passing was the rule and you just broke it. That is the only row where you can say the rule was wrong.
Next, the deploy log says all checks passed. Which rows of the table could you be in and what is Q? Pause it if you need to.
Butterfly, watch it rise. They say it's only entertainment, so I do the line. Use force the wrong way and your power die. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. But I ain't praying this pagan, they Satan really God. No longer harm another brother cause he really robbed. Now petty prostitutes pause like a demigod. East side, the mob lifestyle left behind. Gotta go inside the ambiance, explore the vibe. Truth bringing in my spirit, lyrics codified. Energized with the past lives that it cowardize. Show you right, homework, know you're right. So search, neophyte, know your worth, feel a mic, boom. Explode on a mic, I ignite, main line, lay line, plugged into a dike. Get your mind right, clarify your insight. Cause the ditch that you dig when it floods is the dike. Oh, right hand on the Bible, sacred oath. Sworn in, born again.
P is true, so rows 1 or 2. Q is whether the site actually serves the new build and you have not looked at it yet. You are in row 1 or the amber row and the log cannot tell you which. Go load the site.
Third, fill the table for P if and only if Q, then negate it. What familiar thing is that second column? Take your time.
Flow like a physicist, penetrate the soul through the mind like a stimulus. Tapping in beyond space-time, it's like I'm hearing shit. Can't deny the bow to the God, I'm high-spirited. A big dog like Sirius, full sentient fighting. Every existence is very inquisitive, but the wicked is truly naughty by nature, by curious. 14 with 80, 14 with 80. 14 Five, really? Look, 100 proof, stand firm in the truth. Had to learn till I learned to discern the move smooth. Check my war wounds, I'm covered in tattoos. Untouchable, can't lose. The suckers I can't fuse, I pay dues for the sins of my youth. Cause what I went through, all parties involved, ain't lived through. Listen, it's no excuse, but the guy was confused. That's how you move when you got nothing.
Negate equality and you get true only when the values differ. True, false, and false, true. That is last week's exclusive or not P if and only if Q is exactly the same table as exclusive or 2 weeks, 2 roots, 1 table.
Last, write a check for the claim the short is public that can actually reach bottom. Pause here.
CPUs, energy vampires sucking BTU. They're kidnapping our diamonds and blind us with fake news. So keep the hate coming cause it's making me great. I can't break under what's at stake and it can't wait. I'ma keep seeking truth as long as it takes. Both eyes closed, open my third eye, walking in faith. But I'm a stupid califragilistic, articulate lyricist. Formulate the flow like a physicist. Penetrate the soul through the mind like a this. Tapping in beyond space-time, it's like I'm hearing shit. Can't deny the vibes of the God, I'm high-spirited. A big dog like Sirius, full sentient binary existence is very inquisitive, but the bigot is truly naughty by nature, by curious. Vote team with it. Vote team with it. Vote. Vote team with it.
Ours assume it is not public. Then the public OEmbed endpoint, the one that needs no login, would return an error for that link, call it. If it returns the title and the channel name, the assumption died and the short is public. If it returns an error, you found bottom for real and you have something to fix. Either way you learned Q, we run that exact call after every upload. 4 rows, 1 amber. A pass proves P to no Q, measure Q next week. English, the language that will trip you harder than any symbol, starting with the word if.
Chapter 2 of the workbook is in the description and the pinned comment. 3 moves: write the claim as an arrow, find the amber row, go stand in it and look around. That is the class. Ashe.
Truth tables, quantum melanin media, no hype, just proofs.